Okay, great. Welcome to the Oro Tech Talks. Today, we have our 8th episode, and we're going to be talking about the headless approach and composable approach in B2B commerce. And we will be taking a very practical approach. So we will take a look at a live use case developed by our partner Hycom, and how actually it elevates their operations with a custom-built composable front-end powered by Oro backend. So during our presentation today, we will talk first a little bit about the headless as a buzzword, where it came from, and what actual business advantages and architectural advantages it brings. We will discuss Oro's approach to headless and where we stand with that. And we will get to the most interesting part, which is actually the use case and how Hycom leveraged headless and composable, what type of architectural and tech stack choices they made, and what actual advantages it brought to their business and their customers. We are recording this session, so after the webinar, like about a day or so, you will receive the recording and the slides. And also, please make sure to ask your questions in the Q&A box during the presentation, and we'll make sure that we address all of the questions at the end of the presentation. And before we jump into the actual presentation of the topic, let me give you announcements. So first of all, we are already planning the next season of the Oro Tech Talks for the next year. So please, if you feel inspired by today's topic, or if you have anything you would want to share with the technical community, please let me know. We're always happy to consider interesting topics, and we're always happy to give our community the stage to talk. And another important update is for people who feel that the Oro development knowledge needs a refresher. Very soon, we are launching a public instructor-led training. It is geared towards the North American audience because it is going to be happening in the North American time zone in the morning. So if it works for you, if it fits your schedule, please check our Academy website, trainings or fundamentals, and sign up. It starts on October the 9th and lasts for 4 days. Okay, so with this, let me introduce our today's speakers. So today we have from the Oro side, Maciek. Maciek is an experienced Oro senior developer and a team lead with over 15 years of PHP experience. He has worked with a wide range of frameworks and platforms, including Symfony and the Magento platform. Since Maciek joined Oro in 2018, he has been a great headless enthusiast and a driving force as a lead developer in our services team. And nowadays, Maciek stays in close contact with Oro partners and customers as a technical advisor. From Hycom side, we have Marcin, a front-end IT architect at Hycom. With more than 9 years of experience in numerous projects, Marcin was responsible for designing and delivering accessible, performant web applications, scalable UI frameworks, and design systems. Marcin is also a Contentful certified developer with expertise in content modeling and integration of several headless content management systems. Over the past 2 years, Marcin has been working on actually building Hycom's front-end composable platform, being its solution front-end architect. And we also from Hycom side have here Hubert with us. Hubert is a backend IT architect. He has over 12 years of experience in building, improving, maintaining RESTful services in the backend layer of e-commerce, self-care, and portal solutions. Currently, Hubert is mainly working with headless and composable architecture and is leading the backend team for a project based on Hycom's composable platform. Previously, Hubert has worked with such prominent clients as Deutsche Telekom and Robert Bosch. Welcome to the Tech Talks, guys. Thank you so much for joining. And let's switch to the most interesting part. Over to you, Maciek.
Thank you very much, Anna. So I will start with the headless buzzword, but before I do, I'd like to encourage everyone who's interested in the topic to watch one of our Oro Tech Talks. It was prepared by my colleague Daniel. It covers very deeply the headless approach architecture in context of Oro and also in general context of web applications. You may find all the Oro Tech Talks on YouTube. If you search for Oro Tech Talk, you will have a whole playlist. You can find this episode there. So starting from the buzzword, what does headless mean? So in opposite to a headless approach, there is a traditional approach, monolithic or coupled approach to creating applications in which the data layer is bound with the presentation layer. In terms of headless, this is like the other way around. You have two separate applications bound with a data bus that are communicating with each other, and the presentation layer is totally separated from the data. So by like a historical note of that is it originates in the non-graphical interfaces, like CLI application was the data source, and based on that, on top of that, a UI or like the visual part was executing the CLI application and consuming its textual data, presenting it in a fancy way to the devs, to the users. And moving forward, let's see how the architecture is built. Just a second. Okay, so from the top level standpoint, the architecture, as I mentioned before, there is an application that handles the front end layer, and there's an application that handles the back end. The front end is the head, while the back end is the heart or a body of the application. And the data bus, which I mentioned on the previous slide, is in most cases an API that connects the two. So this approach has bloomed with an introduction of APIs around 2000. It doesn't mean it was not utilized before, because it was, but like the buzzword has gone viral at that point when especially REST APIs were started to be implemented as a standard practice for web applications, and using that fact, there was that concept born to put the head separately from the heart. In commerce context, this was introduced by Forrester Research around 2013 as a term, headless commerce. As I said, it was previously implemented in various solutions. What are the advantages of using such approach? So first of all, and I deliberately put that as on the first place, is the user experience. So the positive first impression usually matters very much for the business, because if the user has the good first impression, it translates to more money. It translates to staying on the website, getting back to it. It translates to leveraging around the website, using its tools in terms of commerce, of purchasing products using the website. So it really matters. And this started to be more prioritized. Well, the business owners has actually realized that this initial experience matters, the first impression, and that's why the business has started putting more effort into making the website faster, better looking, and therefore the concept of the headless application fits here very well because of the most modern tools that can be used for the front-end application, etc., etc. And of course, the performance also matters, which I'll cover on the next slide. The performance in terms of the old approach, so in terms of a monolithic approach, is usually lower due to the fact of introducing that additional execution layer, because the data layer executes its processes and provides the data to the front-end layer, which usually uses some templating engines that causes some delay to prepare a markup language that's the markup output that needs to be transferred to the browser. The response is heavier. It also takes much more time to generate. While in the headless, in opposite, the rendering part is bound to the front application, which resides usually in the browser, and only operate on the textual data coming from the backend. So the rendering takes much less time, and also transfer is faster because of the least amount of data that needs to be transferred with a request. Apart from that, usually there's a legacy baggage in terms of the monolithic applications caused by, let's say, JavaScript that resides on particular pages, which also introduce additional load, additional size of the total response time, and makes the application simply work slower. Apart from that, utilizing the newest frameworks for the front-end application allows to introduce things like pre-rendering techniques and many other caching mechanisms that these tools are designed for improving performance in terms of web applications. Another advantage is the personalization. So the ease of personalization, actually. Imagine there's like one backend and there's a different roles for the application. You have buyers that leverage the e-commerce front store and purchase stuff, use the cart and checkout. There are sales reps work in the terrain. They have, for example, they need to be more mobile. They need a mobile application or an iPad application to manage their customers, quotes, etc. And you've got sellers, for example, that they only focus on promoting their products, and content editors that focus on CMS stuff, articles, blogs, etc. So each of them requires a different front store. And in terms of a monolithic application, it's much harder to create such a front store on this like one monolith, one application, while having separate front-end applications for a same backend is easier. So the headless approach simplifies things much. Another thing to consider is the scalability. In short words, you have two different parts. One can be loaded more than the other. In terms of scaling a monolith application, you scale the whole thing. It doesn't matter if the front end is heavily loaded or the backend the data processing requires more resources. Everything needs to be scaled up. In terms of the approach of headless, you can have a situation when the front end is heavily bombarded by the requests, but using these modern frameworks and some pre-rendering techniques, some caching and stuff, allows you to just scale the front end up while the backend is not that heavily utilized. And this way you can just scale this part related to the front end, or the other way around, where you have an application that does a lot of heavy calculations on the backend, while the front is not that utilized. Then you can scale the backend, keeping the front end with a lower amount of resources. And last but not least, you have the development flexibility. So first of all, the existing teams is not forced to use new technology or sometimes a legacy technology. Imagine that you have like a team, half of your devs are front-end devs, the second half are the back-end devs. And then the product owner or a manager or somebody introduces you a framework that for building an application in an old monolithic way, but also providing an API. So there's a possibility to build a front-end app. And then you have to separate front-end app using the headless approach. And then you have to decide what to do. You either have to teach your devs. So in this case, I'm pretty sure that most that both backend and front-end devs will need to learn the templating language, either it is Twig or any other language that the monolith handles to present to prepare the presentation, or you simply stick to the headless approach. You utilize the API, explore it, extend it if needed, and then the front end team will just focus on things that they are doing best. So they will use I don't know, React, Vue.js, Next.js, all these tools that they know they're best working with, and they can focus on that without having to learn something new or legacy. Yeah. Apart from that, there's a topic related to separate releases. You may want to release some front-end tweaks without having to change the backend. So this will allow you to, for example, just release, like increase the maintenance window. So you just release the front end, the backend remains running. Yeah, a big improvement in terms of that. And we're at the slide where I want to check where are we at with Oro. So by default, Oro provides the monolithic concept using Twig-based templating system and layout system designed by Oro devs for handling the front-end layout, but also it provides an API, a robust API, which makes it sort of like a hybrid monolithic API application. And the existing flexible, reliable API gives it, along with all the features, the B2B features that it has. So corporate hierarchies, meaning customers, users, multi-website functionality, multi-warehouse functionality, multi-vendor, aka the marketplace pricing rules, and so on. And I would say most of all the flexibility and of the architecture, or how the API in Oro is made, makes it like a very good candidate for becoming a headless backend. So what are the benefits of using Oro as headless backends, in my opinion? So as I said, this part related to separate concerns for the front end and backend team, this is covered because you're getting rid of the Twig layer, and the backend team will focus on the backend logic, processing the data and extending the API, while the front-end team will focus on what they are good with, so on the front end and the new technologies used on the front end. The teams are not forced to use the new or legacy technology. The ease of extending the functionality in Oro is pretty big. So using the API along with this ease of extension of the backend makes it a good candidate. And a very big plus here for using the headless approach is the separate releases and easier upgrades to newer version of Oro. In many cases, using the monolithic approach, we have the situation where the customer business requires to override some layout related things, so the views are being overridden quite extensively, and then when a new version of Oro comes, these overrides, this customization also need to be upgraded as well as the core. The outcome of that is that it takes quite long of time to detect and upgrade the changes that were introduced in the new core and to reflect them in these customizations. While using the headless approach and the Oro API, sticking to Oro API only, the ease of upgrades it's easier to perform an upgrade because you don't have all that additional layer of the visual part. So the tweak changes are not present. So you simply upgrade the core, you simply upgrade some of the logic of your customizations to fit into the changes made in the core, and you're done. Virtually not even having to touch the front end. And from the customer perspective, the tweak layer also it introduces, as I previously said, every templating engine introduces some delay. So cutting that off and only making the application return the textual data, then handling that with a front-end application makes everything run faster, look faster, work faster, and the customer experience is boosted. Okay, yeah, so now let's take a look at the real-life cases. I think guys from Hycom will cover everything I was talking about. As you probably know, mission critical for Oro is to build an ecosystem where B2B business thrives. And we're very glad to see that our product, Oro, empowers such solutions as the one that was developed by Hycom guys. And I'm passing the microphone to Hubert. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maciek. Okay, works. So now I'll continue the topic of benefits, and I'll share with you our thoughts on headless from a perspective of a company like Hycom, which is a service provider in this case. So the first benefit I would like to talk about is simply a no-brainer. When you are decoupling the front end and the back end, it gives you the flexibility when choosing appropriate technological stack. We are, of course, not restricted to the one and only front-end framework, like Maciek said earlier, and that is very important because from one hand side, it is giving opportunity for the people to work on a modern technologies of their choice. But what's most important, I think, is that you can simply choose the best software for the job to be done. This flexibility, in turn, allows for even more innovation and optimization. So the next thing, which is a significant benefit, in my opinion, is the resilience to changes, which I define personally as an ability to exchange particular components without affecting the whole ecosystem. This is very crucial because being a technology company, we know how rapid development of new solution is. You can always feel the competition on your back. That's why you don't want to stick forever to a particular solution, but you need to constantly adapt and monitor the market. You want to choose the best software or the best approach available at particular time. So composable architecture really shines here. It works best in such cases because, simply said, headless architectures are more adaptable to future technologies and trends. Another benefit, which might not be so obvious to everyone, and this kind of related to Conway's law, is the division of work that mirrors communication structures in organization. So Hycom mostly consists of specialized developers dedicated to, for example, front-end and back-end technologies. So decoupling of front-end came quite naturally and helps us in delivery. Situation is different for a monolithic system in which most often you will appreciate full stack skills. Yeah, since almost everyone needs to, in that case, be able to touch a bit of HTML and bit of backend logic. As for the customer, on the other hand, the customer will have a totally different perspective on this. First of all, if they are convinced they need such a solution, that is mostly because they have to provide a unique user experience and make the front end part be tailored to customer needs and specifics of their industry. So with headless in mind, you can usually deliver more dynamic, modern and performant front end that can be more easily optimized for different devices, and that would ensure a consistent and engaging user experience. Another aspect is maintenance of the system after its first release. Whenever you are decoupling front-end from commerce, you are naturally limiting the changes needed to be done on our side during the deployments, yeah? This in return makes your life much easier during the Oro commerce upgrades whenever a new release comes out. Moreover, we can't be missing here our favorite buzzword, which is of course composability. Our customers want to be flexible. They want to monitor the market. They want to check their competitors and quickly adapt to those changes. In order to do that, they shouldn't be locked in a particular system or product. This would slow their business down. So when our customers scale their business, they usually need to introduce multiple touch points and commerce channels. Headless solution, in my opinion, fit perfectly here, as they can provide consistent content features to all channels. And just by example, marketing content, translations, product data, and everything is defined once, but may be reused across all the touch points. So you could already see that headless may have many benefits, but there are also cases where it does not make much sense. So, for example, if you have requirements that can be mostly fulfilled by out-of-the-box product, and if your design system does not reassemble B2C commerce, which, I don't know, demands outstanding customer experience, then you most probably do not need to make your project more complex, and a standard Oros storefront could be used for such a case. Same thing applies if your organization is not experienced in bigger IT systems, which of course requires automation, requires also resilience, requires thoughtful security. So in the end, my advice would be that if you have a small degree of customizations required and you have very limited resources on your project, or maybe the project timeline is very challenging, then most probably the monolithic approach is the way to go for you. As you see, there are many aspects that should be taken into consideration when choosing the best architecture to your particular case. So in this slide, I'll try to explain what was our case and reasoning for going headless and implementing the decoupled storefront. So First of all, we have implemented a Oro commerce-based solution for one of our clients. And let me just quote what he said before we started the implementation. We need a modern and future-proof technological solution that gives great UX and is tailored to our specific needs. So we already had Oro as a powerful commerce of our choice, but we were still missing the very last puzzle, which is the front end. Additionally, we were dealing with company from distribution and marketing that already have an extensive IT ecosystem and strong requirements for corporate branding. I could add on top that we had to deal with challenging go-live schedules. And because of that, we needed a way to make the development as much parallel as possible so that front end can work on its part, being not blocked by the backend development with clear API borders. And obviously, we had to provide a highly customized front-end solution. For these reasons, we came up with a solution that I have depicted this simplified diagram. It shows the most important components. So like you can see, the heart of the system is what we call Hycom composable frontend. Martin will show you the details in just a few slides. The brain of the commerce part is, of course, Oro. It is responsible for price and stocks management, shopping list, quotes, order handling, and many more. We have also got a couple of user types, starting from customer admin through prospect user, as well as back office technical and business administrators. Those are all the key users of our system. All of them are managed inside Keycloak. When talking about headless CMS, it provides content and configuration to frontend. This diagram shows the hierarchy of our architecture focusing on touch points and integrations that are beneath. So in our solution, we have delivered a couple of touch points for different personas. We have a progressive web app for the clients or sales agents. Our stack also makes it possible to deliver a native mobile touchpoint as well, because each front-end application talks to the backend using a well-designed API. In the lower layers, there are headless services, which are sliced down, and each of them is focusing on a particular domain. So for example, Oro as the product catalog, shopping cart and checkout process engine, identity, which is built on top of Keycloak, payments that can be provided by different online payment vendors, loyalty service, which is gathering the points gained during the purchases, and many, many more. What's important, each of those services are designed with API first approach in mind to keep the contract intact, even if something would be changed under the hood in those services. And what is important to mention here is that the front end talks to the backend using a dedicated intermediary services. This middleware is designed according to backend for front-end principles, yeah? And basically, this is the layer which gives us an additional layer of abstraction between the front-end itself and domain services. It is crucial in aggregating data from multiple sources, like in our case, CMS and the search engine. At the bottom, we have our integrations to other systems that are consumed by our front-end and back-end services. Okay, now I'd like to briefly show examples of technologies that were used as a building blocks in our solution. So we are using commerce engine, which is Oro Commerce as a major enterprise-grade B2B commerce. Proceeding to CMS, through an API, it is responsible to deliver content and some business configurations related to the front-end layer. Next on the list, we have PIM as a source of technical and business product information. And also it is used for serving images and other binary data associated with products through content delivery network. Finally, search engine. Search engine comes into play every time whenever we want to perform fast and complex queries on our product catalog or any other data that should be searchable. Regarding the mechanisms on the search, we strongly favor the result boosting, synonyms, and language handling. Other crucial technology areas would be starting from identity and access. This component is actually crucial as it is responsible for all user management and associated roles and permissions for them. We also model here the relation between the actual multiple customers with multiple users. As for social login, because it is built on top of Keycloak, we are able to integrate with services like Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple, and many, many more. Finally, the integrations, in which usually we need to gather data externally. So there are lots of low-level integrations with ERP, CRM, CPQ services, but we also connect to those systems in specific cases and pass information about user data changes, placed orders, committed payment statuses, and so on. Okay, wrapping up, as you can see, the architecture and overall count of the components is complex, and in my opinion, it will only grow over time. So effective integration between all these backend services and also the complex user experience is moved to front end. So now I'm more than pleased to pass the mic to Marcin, who will guide you through the front end part of our solution. Marcin, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Hubert. So yeah, I will now go over the front end part, and to start with, the Hycom Composable front end is our front end stack for the that is dedicated to headless solution. Its main purpose is to basically streamline the integration of API-based services and to accelerate the launch of the front-end layer for composable architectures. And we have already mentioned its place in the overall architecture, and I will go more into the details in a moment. But just to give an overview, it consists of two main components. The front-end itself, which is an application that provides the interactive UIs to the customers, composed of reusable UI components that would be accessible to multiple teams and projects to assure consistency. And the other part is the composition layer, where we fetch and aggregate the data from multiple APIs to fully separate the presentation layer from the backend services. An important aspect was that we only wanted to use mature and future-proof technologies for the main parts of the application to make sure that our platform would have a long-time support, as well as, of course, to make it effective to develop new features. And as we have already mentioned, the most important part of our platform is, of course, the integration with Oro, which provides us with the necessary data to display products, which we retrieve through Elasticsearch, and to add products to cart by manipulating the shopping list. Of course, the whole checkout process, where we handle things like delivery and payment methods. And of course, eventually creating an actual order. However, creating such a composable platform is not exactly straightforward. There are many challenges across the whole solution, and too many to talk about today, but there are a few that we think that are the most crucial and that we will focus on today, such as how to integrate many different APIs, how the front-end layer should be built to accommodate the composable architecture, and how to maintain a consistent UI in large solutions. So starting with the first one, one of the main problems is how to integrate many different independent backend components in order to provide a seamless user experience. In the composable world, it's rarely enough to only use one API to provide all the necessary data and logic for the application or even a single page. The data also comes in different formats from each API, which makes the integration even more difficult. And the frontend would ideally ideally want to be completely unaware where the data actually came from, whether there are multiple sources or only one. This would make it possible to create a user-facing application that would provide a seamless process and great UX, no matter what the APIs are actually used. And we solve this with a dedicated API composition layer, sometimes called also backend for frontend or BFF. And it is a separately deployed Node.js application written in TypeScript, where we also use Nest.js framework, providing us with an architecture that defines how the application should be structured in a modular way. It handles data fetching from all the APIs like Commerce Engine, Headless CMS, or Search Engine. And this is the place where we aggregate all that data into a format that is both easily used on the front end and also is constant, which means that it's not dependent on where the data came from. And for this, we have further divided it internally into two levels. On the bottom, there is the integration layer, which contains modules that deal with specific APIs like auto checkout, Strapi CMS, or Elasticsearch, and transform that data into API agnostic format. And above that, there is the module level, where we combine data from multiple integrations into one response for the front-end application. And this allows us to seamlessly replace one integration with another. For example, to replace Strapi CMS with Contentful CMS without having to rewrite the whole module that composes data from multiple integrations like CMS, Oro, and others. And this means that, for example, modules that provide data for product details page or cart page can be totally unaware which CMS was actually used to provide the content. Because each integration also transforms that content into an API agnostic format. And coming up with such a canonical data model is often not an easy task, but it allows us to replace any API with another with little to no changes on the front end. This is especially important as over time there is always a need to either extend the solution or with new services or replace existing ones with others. And one of the main requirements for this component was also to not have any business logic in it. So it should be completely stateless and only focus on orchestration as well as data aggregation and transformation. And because this composition layer is very closely connected to the front end, it is also owned and built by the front end team. Those developers already know exactly what is the data they need to render the page and handle all the logic. So having the BFF built with the front-end related technologies like TypeScript and Node.js makes any necessary changes to that component quite easy. Front-end developers do not need to wait for the backend team to, for example, add a new field to the data model. This makes it also possible to mock some data in an event when some backend API is not yet fully implemented. So our approach basically reduces any team inefficiencies and makes the development process more streamlined. Also, because we are working with inherently asynchronous data, we also wanted to work with it in a more manageable way. And to do that, we are using RxJS library that provides us with methods that are helpful with such operations, like whether we have to make several requests at the same time, or when we only have to make requests only after a previous one finishes. So to sum up, in the composable or headless architecture, the API composition is crucial. It makes it possible to connect all the headless APIs and to deliver all their capabilities to the end user in a way that also ensures high performance. And another issue that our clients often have is that headless solutions usually do not come with a dedicated front-end layer, and it needs to be built from scratch so that it's tailored to their requirements. While for the customers, it's of course the most important user-facing area. So it's expected that whatever APIs are used underneath, the front-end application should work seamlessly across the whole process. And our solution helps in resolving this by providing a progressive web app storefront that out of the box handles most e-commerce features and is a great foundation for other features to be tailored for some particular use case. It is written with the most popular technologies that make teams more effective, like React, TypeScript, and Next.js. And Next.js gives us server-side rendering capabilities, as well as many others like routing and middlewares. And because it uses that server-side rendering, it makes the application more suited for search engine optimization, performance, and accessibility. Because the whole content is served to the browser without having until it renders on the client side, this also makes it it also causes the application to provide the better user experience. One of the key assumptions for this layer was that for data fetching, it should only communicate with API composition application, which should ensure high performance. Ideally, we wanted to have as little requests between both layers, which meant that we usually fetch all the data that is necessary to render the page server-side in one request, while leaving only user-initiated actions like filtering and form submissions on the client side. And in order to accelerate the delivery as much as possible, we have prepared all the areas that are necessary from the business point in our progressive web app store, like product list with filtering, product details page with variants and product suggestions, cart and the whole checkout process, and also the possibility to create static info or marketing pages. Another capability of the solution we provide is that the page layout is not completely static. While headless CMSs do not usually come with built-in layout management, we have managed to partially overcome that and have prepared configurable templates for selected pages where admins can, for example, decide which sections and in what order are displayed by changing the config in the CMS. And another interesting technical aspect of modern web apps is also the state management. It can get quite complex, and therefore we have come up with a solution that limits any potential problem. We have decided on using the XState library, which uses finite state machines to define the information flow within the application, which greatly reduces any unwelcome states that the user could end up in. So our solution is also based on best practices and many of our experience in e-commerce. It quick start the delivery of the front-end layer for the composable front-end system. It is also available both as a web storefront that is rendered traditionally in the browser or installed as a progressive web app, but also as a native storefront, where we can take advantage of several native APIs like push notifications or biometrics, and of course we can install it directly from the app stores. We think that overall this is competitive as compared to other similar solutions on the market, and it gives us even more. It gives even more benefits to our clients. And it is also crucial that the user-facing applications provide a consistent user experience. It is not often easy when dealing with only one application, and especially not not in large-scale solutions where clients have multiple applications like e-commerce, self-service, or a portal, where each should adhere to the same design rules or design system. And maintaining each application, each with its own team, is not exactly easy, as each has its own backlog and its own priorities. And to solve that, we deliver a vast library of UI components. This speeds up the development and also ensures the UI consistency. It contains two parts. The first being the Figma library used by UX designers, which is used to build the full layout of the commerce storefront. We also use tools that optimize the management of those components in large-scale projects across many teams. For example, we can partially automate a designer-developer handoff process. And the other part is, of course, the library of ready-to-use components on the front-end side. This library is decoupled from the main application and stored in an external repository, which means that any team or any project can both access and use it, as well as to contribute new features. We also use Storybook, which is an industry standard for documenting components, which provides an easy way to define what components are available, as well as how they can be configured. It also forces the developers to work on components in a more decoupled way, where they think more in generic terms and not only in the one specific case they need. And we have quite a large base of such components, which range from simple ones like buttons and drop-downs to more complex ones like product boxes and filters. And this library is meant to be used across multiple touch points in order to provide a seamless user experience. However, whenever we share any piece of code, we basically introduce dependencies between the teams, where one team might be forced to wait a long time until another publishes a new component version, or where a change in one component needed by one team makes it unusable for others. So on one hand, we have less duplication and greater UI consistency, but on the other, we could greatly complicate the development. So we solved this by using a tool called BitDev, which is basically an infrastructure that provides us with a workflow for publishing, upgrading, and managing components, where each component is a separate artifact with its own versioning and history. it doesn't really revolutionize the way how the components are developed, but rather introduces a way to make working with them more manageable. It also allows developers to customize the components on their own in case one team doesn't want or doesn't have time to contribute a new version. So the UI library addresses issues that large brands have when they try to scale their design and to keep consistency across all systems. Our approach additionally ensures that this can be done seamlessly by many teams, and in effect plays a significant role in the reduction of project delivery costs. So to sum up, our composable frontend is meant to integrate with different headless services and is based on a progressive web app and native storefront, offering customer-facing interfaces, an extensive UI of both generic and more complex components, an API composition layer that handles all the data aggregation and transformation to API-agnostic format. And with our solution, we can offer our customers an accelerated product delivery. On one hand, by reusing the UI components across multiple platforms, both web and mobile, and on the other, from the reusable overall architecture. The same composable architecture can be used not only in commerce, but basically in any use case, like our own ENU, which is a self-service platform for energy and utilities. So our solution allows us to leverage all the benefits of composable architecture, and it makes it easy to expand and replace backend components with others, thanks to an intermediate composition layer. We are not locked in with specific vendors and are open to integrating new services in the future. So that will be all from our side. Thank you, and I think now is the time for questions and the Q&A session. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maciek, Martin, Hubert. That was really exciting, and we do have a couple of questions. First one from Arnie. Hi guys, thanks for the great topic. You're always welcome. Happy to see Oro evolving. Question to the front end. How are you dealing with session in Oro and the front end part?
Yes, so we are also using the Keycloak that to basically manage the user session and handle all the sign in and sign out process. For maintaining the user session, we basically integrate with Keycloak. We're also using the cookie from Oro, and whenever we make any request in the composition layer, we basically use that cookie to pass it further to Oro.
Thank you, Martin. Another question from anonymous attendee. Who is master of users and customers in your approach? Oro Commerce, Keycloak, or some other system like a CRM?
So yeah, in our solution, customers and users are imported from external CRM system. So we are importing them into our application. In this process, of course, we use also the Keycloak. So in the end, in case of our application, the Keycloak starts to be a master of those data because it actually decides what is put into the token regarding into security. We also needed to replicate those data to Oro because of our usage of the tokens, of the Keycloak tokens. The data must also match on the Oro side. So we needed to pump also those data there.
Thank you, Hubert. And we have another question from Stephen. There was Figma mentioned on your slides. Does this mean that you somehow integrate with it? How do you use it?
So we don't integrate it with it directly from the front end, from the code. We basically have in the Figma there are basically the Figma UIs are basically built from reusable components that are defined in Figma. We also additionally use some tools that allow us to share some design tokens between the Figma and the front-end developers. So in Figma we have defined the tokens like colors, like spacings, and so on, and we are able to also export them for the front-end developers to directly use in their application. So there is less duplication and less chance for some mistakes.
Got it. So we are actually 1 minute over, and it seems like we have no additional questions. Guys, thank you so much for attending, for participation. In case you have questions, please reach out. We will be happy to answer them afterwards, and stay on the lookout for the recording and the slides within 24 hours from now on. Thank you so much, and see you at the next installment of the Oral Tech Talks. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
bye.
Bye.